Alright YouTube, I've spent the last 2 years making reaction videos, building up the editing skills to try to tackle one of these types of videos, but that being said, this is my first attempt, so go easy on me if it's a little rough around the edges. Alright, let's give this a shot. Now, anyone that's been on my channel knows that I talk about heist movies a lot. It's easily one of my favorite genres. And even though I just got done watching an episode of Rick and Morty that might have ruined them for me forever,
hipster dick whose adventures are 60% putting a crew together and 40% revealing that the robbery already happened and he's not worth our time because he's a hack piece of
the concept of a gentleman/lady thief is still probably my favorite trope in fiction. I owned every version of the Carmen Sandiego game from Broderbund. I've watched every episode of the series ever produced. In fact, I really love the new Netflix series, and since I heard season 4 just dropped and it's going to be the last season, I might actually do one of these for the Carmen Sandiego series as a whole going forward. But whether it's Danny Ocean from the Ocean's 11 series, Simon Templar from The Saint, one of my favorite movies ever, Neil Caffrey from White Collar, these were all legit role models for me growing up. I mean, real talk, being a gentleman thief was my career goal as a teenager. But even though I've left that career goal behind, the concept of a thief that plans elaborate heists, breaks into museums without hurting anyone, knocks out the guards, steals the thing, and leaves a calling card, and is just an overall good person despite being a criminal, has just always made me happy. And no character in fiction has done more to put a smile on my face than... Now, for those of you that don't watch anime, Lupin the IIIrd is a manga created back in the 60s by an author known only as Monkey Punch, R.I.P. It got turned into an animated series in Japan back in the 70s, and it follows the half-Japanese grandson of the original character, Arsène Lupin, created back in 1905 by Maurice Leblanc, and probably the first gentleman thief in fiction. Following in his grandfather's footsteps, he travels the world, stealing priceless artifacts with his gunslinger Jigen Daisuke, Ishikawa Goemon, the samurai, and the love of his life Fujiko Mine, who always happens to steal the thing first and leave everyone hanging to be arrested by Inspector Zenigata from Interpol. There's been a lot of cat and mouse stories over the years that I've grown to love, but the borderline friendship of Zenigata and Lupin has always been one of my favorites. I've seen every episode of all 5 series, the way darker Woman Named Fujiko series, and I want to say I've seen every movie, but since there's so fucking many of them, I'm sure there's plenty I've missed. So when I heard that there was a new series on Netflix named Lupin coming out, I started having happy spasms. Then I started seeing all these stories about how it's breaking records and everyone loves it and it's one of the biggest hits that Netflix has ever had. So I recently sat down to watch the first 5 episodes and, well... it's alright. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a fun time watching it, and Omar Sy gives such a good performance that he's worth the price of admission alone, but after 30 years of watching Gentleman Thieves showing me how it's done, a lot of the series just kinda ends up falling flat. Now right off the bat, anyone watching this video who hasn't seen the show yet should know this has absolutely nothing to do with Lupin the IIIrd. This is about the original Lupin by LeBlanc. But here's the thing, it's not really about him either. He doesn't even exist in the show, he's a fictional character from the novels. But much like Lupin the IIIrd, the main character, Hassan Diop, draws inspiration from him and bases his life around him. And that's fine. In fact, as someone that was inspired as a kid by these type of thieves in the exact same way, hell, I can relate to Hassan. But on top of numerous occasions where my ability to suspend disbelief gets put to the test, this really isn't a gentleman thief story. It's a revenge story with very little thieving. Now, I'm going to be going into spoilers from here on out, so if you haven't watched the show, I would honestly still recommend it. It's a fun little romp, and as popular as it's become, I just know there's going to be a lot of crossover fans who find out about Lupin the IIIrd for the first time, so I am here for this show. Give it a shot. Omar Sy is fantastic, and as with all international Netflix series, for the love of God, watch the original audio with subtitles. The dub doesn't do a terrible job.
What the hell is that? What'd you get?
But on top of wanting to hear the original actors' voices, and loving picking up new words and new languages, having the mouth movements not sync up always just kinda irks me. Now, if you've watched the show, or you just don't really care about spoilers, you know that the main story is about Hassan trying to uncover the truth about his father being framed, and to get revenge on the rich asshole Pellegrini. And again, just because it's not about him traveling the country, stealing shit from museums every episode, that's not why this show falls flat. It's that at every turn, nothing he does really makes any sense. In the first episode, we're introduced to Hassan Diop, a janitor working at the Louvre under the name Louis Perena. He meets up with his ex-wife, who seems genuinely surprised that he has a job, and I do kind of like this misdirect at the beginning. If you go into the show as blind as I did, he could very well just be a janitor with big dreams. She makes a point of mentioning that he looks like shit, and then hints at knowing that he has a lot of secrets that he keeps from her and their son Raul, who he continues to stand up. He gives her money and says that he's sorry for being late on alimony, and when she refuses to take it, he manages to sneak it and a little paper rose into her pocket. Now right away, I like this scene because it sets up that he's good at sleight of hand and is apt at reverse pickpocketing. And if he actually was just a janitor hoping to work his way up the thieving ladder, it would be a good little moment showing that he has the skill to do it. But upon re-watching this scene, knowing who he is, I'm a little confused. We're meant to think he's a shitty dad who is late on child support and has to go to a loan shark to get money for it. But later on we see that he clearly has money when we get introduced to his hideout. On top of that, the only member of his team runs a jewelry shop secret thief flare. If he was really running behind on alimony for his son, surely he wouldn't have needed to go to a loan shark from the next scene. Throughout the show, we also see that he loves his son, and after everything that has happened to him as a child growing up without a father, we never really get an answer as to why he stood Raul up the last 3 times they had plans. The only thing I can think of is that he was away on heists, but then wouldn't he have had money to give for alimony? While I understand they're trying to save a big aha scene for the end of the episode, showing that he's a super thief, some kind of hints that he was away thieving would have done more to make his love for his son seem a little less surface level. But again, I did like the little pocket slip and the fact that he folds the flower with one hand throughout the entire cafe scene, and we're never really aware of it until the end. Meets up with the loan shark that he got the alimony from, and he gets dangled over a balcony when he tells the dude he doesn't have his cash because he gave it to his kid's mom. Now right away, this was the first thing that Hassan does that makes absolutely no sense to me. Why the fuck would you let these two people know that you gave their money to your ex-wife? Why would you even let them know you have a family? He ends up befriending them when he brings them into the heist that he's planning, but what if they said no? What if they said, nah, you know what, this seems like too big of a risk for us and we don't know you, so we're gonna throw you over the balcony and go find your family. Now granted, his name isn't actually Louis Perena, and if he wanted to, he could have easily taken the muscle dude, but why chance it? Why not just say you lost the money gambling or something? He does the whole explain the heist scene to them, and then he tells them that he'll be buying the necklace they're stealing. Maybe I missed something, but first off, I'm not even sure how he got an invitation to the auction under the name Paul Sermine in the first place. Surely a multi-million-dollar auction at the Louvre isn't something that anyone can just sign up for. His jewelry store guy might have had some means of pulling it off, but we're never shown that. And on top of that, he goes to the place that he works without any kind of disguise. While the janitorial staff most likely aren't going to get a chance to be face to face with him, all he does is shave his beard into a goatee and puts on some fancy clothing and walks right in the door. In the very first scene of the episode, we get a shot where the security camera clearly picks up his face. Hell, there's an ID card with his face in the system. Why the hell would you risk someone recognizing you? The auction starts off while the henchmen have some admittedly funny moments with what they're led to believe is chloroform spray, which was another thing I was confused about, but I'll get into that later. Now during the auction, 2 things happen. We get a couple of flashbacks to his life as a kid, where we see that his dad was a chauffeur for some rich asshole in his family. And we get to see why anyone is entertaining the notion that Paul Sermine would be allowed to outbid someone for 33 million euros in the first place. And that reason is a Wikipedia entry? That's it? I mean, at the end of the episode, we see that obviously Hassan made a fake entry for a fake millionaire, but that's it? They just check Wikipedia, where anyone can make or add something and call it a day? What if they just Googled him? Hell, chances are they did Google him, and the Wikipedia entry was the one and only thing that popped up. Wouldn't that be a bit of a tip-off? Like, there's no Forbes article about him, there's no France version of, like, Business Insider or something? Just one random Wikipedia page? I also really love this little moment at the end where they show you him photoshopping his face onto like some random dude to put as the Wikipedia pic. But I don't even understand this scene. Like, why does he need to Photoshop his face onto some random person? Why can't he just put on a suit and take a picture? Like, at first I thought maybe it had a background of some like Fortune 500 company office that he doesn't have access to, but it's just some room. Like, look at the shitty ass picture. The dude he's photoshopping his face on is photoshopped. Like, for there to still be a background behind this transparent head, this has to be 2 pictures. So if you're just gonna photoshop the entire thing into the background, why not A, pick a better background, and B, just take the full picture yourself? Even funnier is I'm like 100% positive that this was just a picture of Omar Sy in the first place. Like, look at the bottom right corner when he's making the composite. It's already there, it's already done. And it makes sense. Why would the studio go through the trouble of having to Photoshop his face into a perfect fake when you can just remove his face, start the scene with it missing, and just add it back in later? And what the fuck is this AI algorithm face tracker thing in the background? Is it actively searching for his closest matches when he's just gonna take the whole face off anyways? This makes no sense to me. Now, as for the big payoff, I'm not someone who can enjoy stupid things, so for all you assholes typing, it's a fictional show, you have to be able to blah blah blah, look, this payoff was stupid, and I still enjoyed it, alright? I'm allowed to enjoy stupid things while still pointing out that they're stupid. Because the 2 goons managed to make their way into being the only people alone in the room with Hassan, the auctioneer and the necklace. They double cross him and a fight breaks out. We then find out that Hassan always counted on them betraying him, tossed a fake one onto the ground and the real one in the trash during the tussle. But in regards to plans, this is one of those Joker from the Dark Knight, Javier Bardem from Skyfall's problems, where you're just expecting me to believe too many things that have to go off exactly without a hitch for it to work. One of my favorite parts of heists is when a bunch of stuff goes wrong and everyone has to come together and try to figure out how to see the plan through. What happens if these idiots don't make it all the way to the final room? They're just a muscle dude and some random asshole. You expect them to sneak their way all the way to the final stage of your plan with 0 training whatsoever. And what was the deal with the chloroform spray from earlier? If your whole plan depends on you being able to use their betrayal to your advantage, but they have to be there at the end, why would you tell them to use fake chloroform spray, which basically guarantees they're gonna get caught? And why did the dude use it twice when he clearly realizes that it doesn't work the first time? Does Hassan think that the cops aren't going to check the bin? And for those of you arguing, oh come on, that's not that big of a deal, do you really think that at some point one of the janitorial staff that's not Hassan isn't going to have to at least put that whole thing upright again? Not saying they'd 100% for sure see it, but he does just kind of lob it in there since he doesn't really have time to dig it in deep. And even though it's insane that he'd go back there the next day and not a single security guard would be like, oh, that's that millionaire that got robbed last night. I was kind of amused by him sneaking it out in baby poop. But then that got ruined by him going through the bag, taking it out, and very openly looking at it like 5 feet away from the security guards. Lastly, he rips off his disguise and walks out the secret underground exit that I guess has no cameras on the inside to see him walking out in different clothes holding a diamond necklace, but this is another one of those whatever he looks cool moments. I mean, almost every aspect of this episode can be summed up this way.
With like a cool double cross and then this big awesome twist where there's like another double cross, but then we reveal those things were all part of the hero's plan.
But again, whatever, in for a penny, in for a pound, and I don't care about plot holes. It has the word Lupin in it, and I was hoping that maybe the series would get better. But then in the next episode, he sets up a meet with Pellegrini's daughter from the flashback, and it's another one of those plans. Now the cops plant a bug on her and he blocks it with his hand, which I'm pretty sure that's not the way bugs work, but I'm not a cop so don't at me, just so we can have a private conversation with her. In the process, he takes his mask off and she realizes that she knows who he is. The detective says he can't see his face, but are you really going to tell me this guy broke into one of the most world-renowned museums and this camera angle is the only one you have? I was guessing they did that because they wanted a reason not to move in until they had confirmation, but what more confirmation do you need? The guy sat down on the pre-planned bench and put his hand over the microphone. Like, even if you want to go with the, they want to make sure that it's the main dude and not just a lackey reasoning, he put his hand over the bug, so it's not like if Hassan hired this delivery dude, he wouldn't have already bounced at the police presence. You might as well just move in and get this guy now. Now he sends somebody in to get a closer look and it tips off Hassan when he sees her bulletproof vest, but you already had this guy sitting on the bench. Like, if you had him, then why did you need to send her in? And even if that doesn't bother you, she's there for a pretty fair amount of time. There's no reason she wouldn't be able to identify Hassan. So he makes a run for it, and here's the thing, even though he's taking an awfully big chance assuming there won't be any blockades or that none of the agents might get to him in time, I did like the little multiple delivery dudes trick. It's made even better by the fact that all these delivery dudes just show up at the same corner, and even though there's cops pointing guns at people that are dressed exactly like them, more of them keep showing up and putting themselves directly in front of guns. Like, I don't know about you, but if I saw a bunch of cops pointing guns at people that were dressed exactly like me, I would probably go somewhere else. Grubhub can't be paying that much, but it does lend itself well to the scene. Even if once again he does his wardrobe change way too out in the open, Like, this person walks by. What if they see the cops are rounding up delivery drivers and all of a sudden here's this dude nervously watching them while changing? They could have easily been like, yo, this dude just changed out of one of those outfits. Not to mention the potential of there still being cops in the park that were chasing him that might have been slower than the rest. Look, all I'm saying is that he could have picked a more discreet place to change. So we find out that there's an inmate that shared a cell with his dad that might have information that could help exonerate him, so he decides to break into jail. Now at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was ready to talk shit about this whole prison swap scene. It's one of the things that people seem to bitch about the most. But really, it could work. I mean, the whole deal is that he takes the place of a random prisoner because he's memorized the guard's shift change and leaves when the new guard shows up. The overanalyzing part of my brain wants to say that it's one of those too much to believe moments, but I don't know the inner workings of the French penal system. I doubt they get like retinal scans after prisoners get visitors, but I still feel like this scene is pushing it, even if I'm letting it slide. So he finds the dude who shared a cell with his dad, and his dad gave this guy a book to hold on to until somebody came looking. But my guy, it's been 20 years. Like, did Babacar know that someday his son would grow up to be a master criminal, break into jail and find this dude just to ask him about the book? And then to get out of jail with his new information, Hassan pretends to hang himself with the basketball net he stole and some drugs that he boosted to lower his heart rate, I guess? And here's the thing, I actually rewound the scene a couple times when he steals the net just because it reminded me a lot of this scene from Cowboy Bebop. And I always love little moments like that. But while I get that the drugs lower his heart rate so that the medical examiners think that he's dead, at some point they're gonna have to take him down from where he was hanging. And I just don't see how one of those dudes doesn't notice he didn't really hang from the neck. Not to mention, I have no idea how he just wakes up 30 minutes later. Like, I don't know how many of you have ever taken a knockout drug, but chances are if you take 10 of them, you're not waking up in 30 minutes like this. In any other type of story where something like this takes place, the ambulance drivers would be part of Hassan's team and inject him with adrenaline or something. Instead, he just wakes up casually and walks out of the truck at a red light, while the "he's a master of deception" music plays. He confronts Pellegrini's wife and finds out that she's the one that paid for his fancy schooling because she felt bad for, you know, his father going to prison and dying and leaving him orphaned. Now, the third episode was equally as ridiculous, but I gotta admit, I was still pretty entertained the entire time and was still enjoying the show. Hassan kidnaps the inspector that was assigned to his father's case, who's now the police commissioner, and kidnapping a police commissioner in the middle of a busy police station is already pushing it, but it is one of the few times he actually puts on some kind of disguise, so he gets points for that. Like, it's just eyebrows, glasses, a hat, and some bad posture, but it's something. You still have an entire city's police department looking for a dude whose face they have a picture of, but he does a convincing enough job here that I'll let it ride. He interrogates the inspector while we get some flashbacks on how he met Raul's mother, and we see that they've known each other since they were kids. But there are numerous moments in this show where she seems genuinely unaware of the full extent of his other life, and I'm not sure how that's even remotely possible. You meet a dude as a kid, you fall in love, you spend years together, you have a kid together, all while never knowing about his thieving ways? I'm just gonna chalk it up to willful ignorance and move on. We get to the part of the interrogation where he's asking nothing but questions about his father. And I kept waiting for the inspector to put two and two together, but no, he just keeps yelling back and forth until Hassan finally just flat out says,
"You liar! Tell me why you frayed my dad!"
Then they try to add this shit, like it's some crazy monumental revelation that he's just had. The secret cover's been blown! But this is one of the top 3 biggest problems I had with this show. Why isn't Hassan the first thought on everyone's mind, let alone the inspector? I don't really understand how no one seemed to think, it seems that this necklace was stolen by a guy many years ago and he hung himself and left an orphaned son. Maybe we should check up on that kid. But this inspector is kidnapped, and the person on the other end keeps screaming about how Babacar was framed and he was innocent. And it's not like he doesn't remember Hassan at all. When he has the revelation, we clearly see that he remembers Hassan and his face. And he's an inspector who's been with the police department for over 2 decades. You could chalk it up to, oh, he's a shitty inspector. But when he gets home, he manages to find every single hidden camera in the house. Hassan is supposed to be this master criminal, but he couldn't find one spot in the house to hide a camera where this asshole couldn't find it? Damn, that must be a pretty highly capable inspector. But it takes Hassan screaming,
"Tell me why you frayed my dad!"
For him to figure out that the son of the guy who killed himself after he got framed might be the guy asking why he framed him? And what about Hassan? Like, I understand what they're going for here. It's that, oh no, he's so emotionally worked up that he made a critical error moment. But for a guy this smooth, it kind of feels like amateur hour, regardless of emotion. But we're gonna throw this in the, yeah, whatever, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that he slips up like this pile, because I can't believe how long this video is, and I need to get to the next episode. Because between this being my first video review and my first time using Premiere, this video was supposed to be just 5 to 10 minutes long about the flaws in the first episode's plan. But on the rewatch, too many more things were sticking out like sore thumbs. So if you're new to the channel and you've been having fun with this, maybe possibly hit the like button. I'm trying to make stuff like this every week, and hitting that thumbs up lets me know all the time that I spent on this was worth it. If you're a returning visitor and you've enjoyed this attempt at trying to do some new things on the channel and you want to see more stuff like this, same shit. But as many times as I've let things slide, the 4th episode of Lupin has some of the things that are just so dumb that I can't possibly forgive. The one dumbest moment in the entire first 5 episodes, and that's on top of all the other shit. So this episode begins with Pellegrini's mansion getting infiltrated by a drone obviously controlled by Hassan. And while we're supposed to watch this and say, oh, that's a pretty clever way to get around a laser alarm system, and I can buy that when setting up security, they figured the camera at the front and the 700 laser tripwires was enough, and they didn't need to put any sound detectors, but what's the point of the camera? Like, I watched this moment 10 times trying to figure out what was happening, and I'm assuming the red light was blinking and was constantly recording. But he just flies right underneath it. But even more than all that is, how does no one hear this thing? Like, the drone hits a laser on the way out, and within 10 seconds, the entire compound is swarming with guards. But no one hears this drone? Have you ever heard a drone? They are not silent by any stretch of the imagination. At one point, the subtitles even say buzzing grows louder. And then presumably, regardless of recording or not, one of these dudes would have to be in a security room watching all the cameras in the house, right? But the biggest head scratcher is the fact that he trips the wire on the way out. Because at first it looks like it could be accidental on Hassan's part, and then when the drone tries to escape, part of me started thinking, this is just Hassan fucking with them. He's miles away, recording this all on tape, and now he's just doing this to spook Pellegrini. Which gets confirmed when the guards give Pellegrini the captured drone and he finds a note saying, "I'll get you." But the guard makes a point to say any information was destroyed too. And moments later, when they say the perimeter's cleared, no sign anywhere, we see Hassan on the roof looking upset. And there's just so much wrong with this scene. How does a guard say the perimeter's clear but no one thinks to check the roof? More importantly, why is Hassan on the roof in the first place? Like 3 years ago, I was looking up drones just because I thought they were cool, and I saw the Maverick MJ4, I think it was called. And just to show off how far the thing could go from the controls, there was a YouTuber that flew it alongside a cruise ship for like 4 miles off the Florida coast. That was 3-4 years ago. There is absolutely no reason for Hassan to have to be on this roof to control the drone other than this shot looks cool. The only excuse that I could think of is that because he plans on it getting captured so the note can get taken by Pellegrini to shake him up, it's such a cheap drone that he has to be close by. That's the only way this works. But then what was the point of sneaking into the office and taking pictures of shit? Like, there's clearly a camera that he can see out of if he's controlling it. He's flying it through lasers and we hear it taking pictures of papers. And even if the controller doesn't have a record function, why not bust out a cell phone and record any incriminating evidence you find? The guard said all the information was destroyed and nothing of value gets brought up from this infiltration, so why bother doing any of this? Why not just throw a rock through his window saying, "I'll get you"? So Hassan goes to pay the inspector a visit in public, and it actually takes him a second to recognize him. Like this dude just kidnapped you yesterday. Not taking into account the fact that he might have a security detail for safety, surely when this 6'3" dude sits down in front of you talking shit, even if the glasses were that great of a disguise, the dude who found every hidden camera in a house would be able to put 2 and 2 together. And I was gonna bitch about the fact that he keeps Hassan's identity a secret, but considering that he does give up information on Pellegrini here, I'm assuming he wants out from under his thumb, or maybe he just feels bad about Babacar. But there's no way to know, because he only gives up this information when Hassan hints that he's kidnapped his wife. So he leads Hassan to an ex-reporter that had a big scoop on Pellegrini back in the day, and he teams up with her to go get a secret recording of Pellegrini selling arms to, I don't remember, Syria? I don't know. And this is one of those few moments in the show where I stop questioning everything and I can just enjoy this scene. Cause it does a good job showing his versatility. He goes into the car looking like this, he finds some files in the backseat, takes her glasses, and he walks in the building looking like this while teaching her the coward trick. I love everything about this scene. I'm really not asking for much with this show. If you're gonna portray Hassan as a master criminal who's modeled his entire life around Lupin for 2 decades, you can't have him acting like an amateur every step of the way. You gotta show me some skill on his part, which this scene thankfully does. Now, while this scene is playing out, Forensics is interviewing witnesses, trying to create a compilation of the master thief terrorizing the city. But again, how do they not have the picture from Wikipedia? How is this picture not on every TV in Paris saying, yo, watch out for this dude? Literally, the only possible explanation is that Hassan put some kind of a timer on the picture that deletes after the first heist was over, but then say that! You can't have an entire scene where sketch artists are trying to give police pictures to work with when the entirety of the first heist was based around an easily available photo of him. And even if you say that's the case, even if you say that he deleted the picture, I'll even take it one step further. You remember that AI algorithm thing that I didn't know what that was? Let's say I'm an idiot and this actually isn't Omar's side. Let's say that the AI face tracker thingy found someone that resembles him so closely that he was able to use that for a picture to get away with it. He showed up to a red carpet gala event. There are literally cameras taking pictures of him as he shows up. Not to mention the hundreds of security cameras inside the Louvre that had to have gotten a glimpse of him. What about his ID badge? Like, here we see the janitorial manager he cons in the first episode giving a description. And back in the second episode, Guidera figures out that Louis Perena is actually an anagram of Arsène Lupin. So either he went to her because he figured it out, or she went to them when Louis Perena just happened to stop showing up for work. But either way, there was an ID badge with his face in the system. Why not just take that picture and feature it on every news cycle until you find this guy? There's so many pictures of this dude all over the place. I don't understand what this is. What is this? And there's like 4 or 5 people that don't look that dissimilar, and she's sitting there like, oh my god, they're all clearly different people. And then they laugh at him when he's like, oh, you know, maybe he put glasses on this time around. I know, I'm just crazy. So we find out the tape contains secret footage of Pellegrini selling weapons to Malaysians who blew up the French embassy when he ends up double-crossing them, and that he probably used the insurance money from framing Babacar to buy the weapons in the first place. And here is where the biggest, dumbest plot hole in the entire series comes into play, because this is damning evidence. Hassan even says this is all they'll need to finish Pellegrini off, and that he'll post it to Twitter in 24 hours, but first, he gives Pellegrini the chance to come clean. Now, this actually isn't a bad idea. It raises public curiosity, which would just help the eventual release of the video reach more viewers. It gives Pellegrini the chance to actually come clean, even though he's obviously not going to. It helps sow seeds of distrust between him and his daughter. It makes him have to publicly make a statement, which in turn continues making the story bigger. He tries to have it scrubbed, but it was already retweeted 2,000 times, and Streisand effect dictates trying to delete the tweet is just going to help him dig his own grave faster. From every logical standpoint, this is the right call for Hassan to make, and it made me so happy. Now, after a brief scene where he actually goes and hangs out with his son to play the widely known 2-player game Horizon Zero Dawn, I know this is a minor nitpick. It's one of those things that makes me laugh more than it upsets me. They even managed to make it look convincing by having Raoul hit an enemy turn to his dad and say, boom, headshot! So Pellegrini has that public statement where the only argument he has to offer is, this guy is anonymous, therefore there's no need to listen to him. But this actually kinda works on Pellegrini's part too. He flat out dismisses it, but brings it up anyways because his daughter is starting a foundation to help kids and the rumor hurts her goals. Again, smart. It's not just a deflection, but he gets to play on his daughter's foundation to add some sympathy to the equation. Like, even if I never really buy that Discount Saul Berenson here is a master villain, these are all the right moves. And just as I was starting to feel like this show was starting to find its rhythm...
Do you believe you have the blood of the victims of Kuala Lumpur on your hands?
Like, I get that after ruining her career, she wants some revenge and to feel like she's part of the story again, but why put a target on yourself like that? This dude obviously has resources at his disposal, he's not above doing some shady shit, and now all of a sudden, this reporter who went into hiding after almost getting him 10 years ago shows up the same day this tweet comes out? Hassan even says that wasn't part of the plan, and his jeweler dude even says she'll get caught. But then what was the plan? They didn't seem too shook at the fact that she was there at all. Was she supposed to be there just to, show her face and get a recording for her vlog? She was obviously going to talk shit. I wouldn't have even let her go there. Then instead of being nervous for her life, they just kind of go, wow, she's so badass, while she gets this little, I'm so happy and definitely not going to be brutally murdered moment. So the least intimidating looking fixer starts to follow her, and to her credit, she does pick up on the tail, but then she just kind of loses sight of him and says, I'm probably good to walk into my building. We get more of the, I'm definitely not going to die a horrible death moments, and then she mentions that she had a dude following her. Look at Hassan's face. Look at it. This is the correct face to make upon hearing this. He clearly understands what's at stake here, but all she has to say is, oh, I know how to lose a tail, and he instantly relaxes and just kind of goes with it. Like, personally, if I was Hassan, as soon as she says she's being followed, I'm bringing her to Jewelry Dude's place with the quickness. I mean, he already likes her, we know that he cares about her, why not be safe? In a genre where every character is known for taking multiple precautions due to the volatile nature of their occupation, I feel like so many of the biggest problems I have with this series is Hassan never covers his ass ever. And the most egregious case of this is the scene that literally every single person who has watched this show has complained about. Whether they like the show or not, it's the one that makes the least amount of sense of almost anything I've ever seen. The interview. So Fabienne flat out says, oh, we're gonna release the whole thing online? Just to have Hassan say no, he's gonna go on a national show to show that Salvatore 815 isn't some anonymous face when he releases the video. And the next few scenes are hands down my favorite parts of this entire show. Like, we get a really sweet moment where Hassan says, you know what, you've taken too much risk, I want to do this for my father, and they get to reminisce about him. It's a touching, sweet little moment. Guedira gets to have his moment too. While he's showing the commissioner all the ID composites, he surprises him with this one. A perfect composite given by the loan shark dude when he went to visit him to find out about Louis Perena. Not only does the commissioner give off a this is the guy vibe, but his captain and his partner finally believe him, and I do not understand for the life of me how it took them this long. This should have been easily one of the most compelling parts of this entire story. Like, if there was one criminal super thief with the name that's an anagram for Arsène Lupin, maybe I could understand their hesitance. But two people in the same night of a heist have the name of a guy known for disguises and heists. Not to mention that it's not like Hassan changes his height, even if the composites weren't identical. If everybody questioned says this dude was 6'3" and all the names are anagrams of Lupin, it just makes absolutely no sense for them to think he's being crazy. So for them to see the light and be on his side finally took that negative aspect of the show away from me. Then we get the most Lupin thing in the entire series. He actually wears a real disguise. Not only that, we find out he's extremely good at makeup and he has an entire arsenal of wigs and brushes and all kinds of stuff at his disposal. So why not wear any of these before? Like, if all these pictures had wigs and makeup and facial hair differences, I could understand where the cops are coming from. But he has the exact same hairline in every picture. Look at this. This is fantastic. This is some Lupin shit right here. You know the whole takes the mask off to reveal Tom Cruise thing that got so much play in Mission Impossible? Lupin the IIIrd does that like every other episode. Masks and makeup and disguises are supposed to be the biggest tool in a gentleman thief's arsenal, so it was aggravating me how much of this show's problems could have been fixed with a simple wig or something. So Hassan goes on the talk show in his Salvatore disguise, they roll the tape, and lo and behold, it's been edited. And right away we can see on Hassan's face that he is completely taken by surprise by this. Now the weaselly little host goes, that's it, and cuts to commercial, but I still can't get over how surprised he looks here. Pellegrini is one of the richest people in France. He has the police so wrapped around his finger that even when they have clear evidence that his daughter knows who the person that stole the necklace was, when they ask her about it, she tells them they're idiots and to fuck off, and they do. The police commissioner himself framed Hassan's father and still has Pellegrini on speed dial 20 years later. I could totally understand Hassan going on the show hoping everything would be on the up and up, but once the tape was shown to be edited, I was waiting for like a smile, a chuckle, for a, oh, he got to you too, huh? Well, here's the unedited footage and now the world can see how far his reach is. What I wasn't expecting was for him to act like this was something he couldn't possibly see coming. And right here, I started getting nervous. Because my first thought, based on the last 3.5 episodes of this show thinking that it's coming up with these awesome twists, in my heart, I knew what was coming, but I refused to believe. And for a brief moment, I actually forgot about that because when Pellegrini's goons advance on Hassan expecting an elderly old man, he beats their asses with his cane. On top of the fact that this was some pretty decent fight choreography, all I could think about was anyone watching this elderly man beat the ever-living shit out of 5 dudes and how confused they must have been. Then he goes outside and within 30 seconds has completely changed his appearance in a way that feels 100% believable while everyone else is looking for Ninja Grandpa. I almost started feeling relief. But less than 20 minutes ago in the episode, Hassan says he's gonna put the whole video on Twitter. He says it! Remember when I said at the beginning of the episode how I don't understand why he didn't just use his phone to record the drone's LED screen? You sneak into a building, you find a VHS proving the dude who framed your father and led to his death. The dude who directly caused you to grow up as an orphan. You get video evidence of this dude that would bury him. And again, I firmly believe holding off and releasing that first tweet was the right call. But once he makes a public statement saying that he has nothing to hide and you shouldn't be trusted, how do you not instantly send that video to every news desk in the country? Fabienne makes a point to say the show that he's going on isn't real journalism and it's just clickbait. If this tape got sent to every news editor, there's no way Pellegrini's going to be able to cover it up. It's almost guaranteed that they'll all do further investigation to try to uncover more facts so they can get the new pieces of this big story. And then of course there's the way simpler idea, and the one that I feel like everyone agrees upon is the only logical choice. Just put the stupid thing on Twitter like you said you were going to. Before he goes on the show, he makes a point to mention they have a nightly viewership of 2 million people and that's why he's doing it. Who the hell cares? You release video evidence, especially after 24 hours of hype, of one of the richest people in France being directly involved in the bombing of a French embassy, and that shit will hit 2 million views on Twitter in the first hour. You still want to put on your disguise and go on the show and have a big TV moment? Fine. Give the recording to Fabienne and say at exactly this time, upload it to Twitter. Then go on the show, when that set time comes, tell the host, yo, check my Twitter feed. The worst they could do is say, oh, this was a deep fake or something, but cross that bridge when you get there. Now, not only do you not have the tape anymore, but every one of those 2 million people who tuned in saw a big old nothing burger, instantly ruining all the buildup he worked towards. Even worse is the fact that they don't ever even mention that this is the only copy. They never say that. The writers of the show are just assuming everyone's going to come to the unanimous consensus of, well, obviously it's the only copy, it's a VHS. So we cut to Fabienne all alone in her apartment, and if it's not obvious enough that she's about to die, she writes a note to Hassan in his copy of her book with the pen that he gave her to celebrate their friendship. And while I was watching this big suspenseful scene play out, I gotta be honest with you, I was laughing just a little bit. All I could think about was, I think she could take this dude. He doesn't look all that young, and she's easily got a good 20-30 pounds on him. He never shows that he's armed. He doesn't even pull out a knife. When he grabs her by the neck here, my first thought looking at this was, if she's fighting like her life depends on it, which it does, I would give her 40-60 odds of making it out of this alive. Instead, she just smiles and says, a good reporter never reveals her sources. Hassan finds her hanging from the ceiling, and there isn't a single thing out of place. No books knocked over, no toppled shelves. How do you not put up a fight against an unarmed dude that is so plainly smaller than you and trying to kill you? Then, imagine that she's dead. Imagine the tiny over here killed her. Now he has to drag her over to the ceiling beam and lift her with the rope. Does anyone watching this think that it would be physically possible for him to do that before Hassan gets there? I'm a pretty big dude and I can flat out guarantee you that there is no way I'm going to be able to kill this chick, drag her body to the middle of the apartment, lift her up the stage of suicide, and get out of there before Hassan shows up. And while Hassan was crying and holding her dog, I was waiting for cops to show up. Wouldn't that have been a million times easier? Stab or shoot her, leave her on the floor, and call the cops. So when when Hassan shows up, bam! He's already wanted by basically every law enforcement agent in the country. The only redeeming quality of the last 20 minutes of this episode is that Omar Sy gives a really good performance here. Not good enough to make me forget how dumb everything happening is, but good enough that I still felt bad for Hassan despite how dumb everything happening is. It closes with Gudira looking at the broadcast and realizing what he's looking at, while Hassan reads the inscription that she left him and we see a chessboard on the screen. Why is there a chessboard on the screen? Is he playing chess right now? It doesn't look like an application, it looks like a photo of a chessboard. Is this just some really subtle way to show that this is all a game of chess? Ugh. Look, I've been lighthearted about all the problems I've had with this show, despite the last 40 minutes of me rambling about how dumb some of this shit is. I've still been laughing the whole way, because I was enjoying myself, but I got nothing here. I was vibing like crazy, and now I felt so defeated, but I couldn't just watch 4 of the 5 episodes, so I started the finale completely expecting to be let down by every plot element, but so in love with Omar Sy's performance that I continued to just roll with it, and honestly, I was wrong. The last episode kind of brought this whole thing back around for me. It starts with Tiny following Hassan, and after a pretty entertaining little chase, it ends up on a rooftop. But again, why is 6'3", like 10 years younger Hassan running from the smallest assassin since Hit Girl? This dude who works for the asshole that killed your father just himself murdered one of your only friends in the world. Granted, he only met her like 24 hours ago, but I believed their quick budding relationship and would think he would want some kind of revenge. But when he escapes, he just gives a little haha, catch you next time with a smile and dips out. Whatever. He goes to see Raoul for his birthday and gives him a Lupin top. Now, if your son is heavy into Lupin and reading all the books like he said he was, this would be a cute little gift despite the fact that he could never wear it in public without getting the shit kicked out of him. He guilts Raoul's mom into coming on a train ride with them via some pretty adorable sad puppy faces, and we get a flashback to 2005 where she's in therapy mentioning that she knows he's a thief, but quote, doesn't know the half of what he does. And if she just met the dude like 3 years ago, I might be able to buy that. But again, they've been together since they were kids. Luckily, we're then treated to probably the best heist in the whole show, and one that started to help win me back a little with how smart it actually was. In fact, it was probably the most clever thing this show did in the first 5 episodes. He calls the police to some rich lady's house, and when he shows up, he flashes a fake bag showing seniority, tells them there's a burglar he's chasing, and asks them to go around back to make sure the burglar doesn't escape. Then, he goes to the rich lady and uses the fact that they're waiting outside to lull her into a false sense of security while scaring her into believing that her building is under siege by thieves. He does such a good job that he cons her into thinking giving him all her most valuable possessions is her idea, then goes back to the 2 cops, tells them he chased the dude but he dropped the valuables, which she's now taking back to the precinct to file as evidence. He even shows them the valuable. I mean, could they have called in to dispatch for backup and found out it was all a lie? Yeah, sure, but that's the kind of thing I'm easily able to suspend my disbelief for, because everything about this scene is everything I love about the genre. We get a little moment with Jewelry Dude talking about how he's going to open the store/thief lair, and I like it, because I'm more interested in the hijinks that these two have gotten in together than anything. I always love watching interactions between gentlemen thieves and their most trusted partners. It's a dynamic that always entertains. We cut back to the family D-Up, and we see that Tiny's on the train with them via a selfie. They have a cute little moment where Hassan gets the whole car to sing happy birthday to Raoul, and then he steals some train car keys from a way less cut tickets please guy. He leaves a door open, and when Tiny pops his head in, a fight breaks out. Now, after the scene with Fabian, this fight had one goal for me. Hassan needed to completely overpower it in every way. You want me to believe that somewhat elderly lady reporter can't put up a fight against this dude? Fine. But I've spent the last 40 minutes talking about how Hassan is like 6'3", and there is no conceivable way he doesn't dominate this fight, and thankfully, that's exactly what happens. I could be annoyed that he just locks Tiny in there instead of knocking him out. I mean, I don't expect him to straight up murder the dude, but considering your entire family is on the train with you, you'd think he would take a little bit more precaution. We cut to the night that Claire tells Hassan she's pregnant, and I know I've been saying that Omar Sy this and Omar Sy that nonstop when discussing how good he is in this role, but when I tell you that I legit teared up at this scene because of how well he sells it, I'm being honest. It's adorable. I love how happy he is during this scene. It's even funnier that the old lady he conned sees him and he just dips out. So Tiny obviously gets free, flashes some chrome, and politely threatens the family. Sure bet you wish you knocked him out right about now. Like, if you were just gonna lock him in there for 5 minutes, what was the point of the fight in the first place? Hassan ends up texting young Willem Dafoe here and letting him know he's on the train and he's in a beige jacket. Claire obviously picks up on the impending danger and takes Raoul away, and since Tiny is only there for Hassan, he doesn't stop them and they get off the train. And when they do that, since Hassan told Willem Dafoe he was wearing a beige jacket, That's what the cops waiting at the terminal are expecting. They detain Tiny and they find the gun in his pocket along with the diamond from the necklace. Now, even though this is obviously not Paul Sermine, the fact that he had a gun is enough to hold him, and the fact that he has one of the diamonds would lead them to believe that at the very least, he's a co-conspirator, which takes him out of the equation rather effortlessly, but in a way that totally works for me. Hassan rejoins his family, we get some really gorgeous scenery shots, and Raoul finds out that everyone is wearing a top hat because it's the Lupin festival celebrating LeBlanc's birthday. And I gotta say, I agree with him here. Anywhere else, this would be unbelievably hideous, but I would 100% rock a top hat at a Lupin festival with zero shame. He scampers off while we get another really sweet flashback, and when we come back, he's obviously missing, and we find out they let Tiny go because he had an alibi for the burglary and a gun light. I still feel like they had enough to at least hold him for a bit, but considering the commissioner's face when he tells Defoe that he let Tiny go, I'm gonna assume Pellegrini hit him up and told him to let the guy walk. He kidnaps Raoul, and while Hassan is looking for him, Guadirda shows up, and
Lupin?
And that's it. And you know what? I really liked that ending. And I'm actually happy because I kind of got spoiled a little bit by someone telling me that at the very end of this whole thing, Lupin gets caught. So I was expecting police to show up. I was expecting a whole bunch of shit to go down. But this little Lupin? I don't know. It's kind of cute. This guy's clearly a Lupin fan. He's been tracking this guy who's clearly a Lupin fan. He knows that Hassan's not really a bad guy. Hassan is probably going to be able to get him to turn to his side to help him take down the commissioner / Pellegrini. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. The first 4 episodes had so many dumb moments, but I was entertained the entire time. And then the 5th episode kind of brought it all back and made me happy again. So like I said, this show might have had some dumb moments, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to part 2 when it comes out later on this year. And I hope you guys understand that the fact that I made this video and the fact that I was shit talking it basically the entire time does not change the fact that I still like. You know how you can be a little bit meaner to your friends that you love? It's kind of how this feels. This felt like something that was specifically made for me, but it was just, you know, didn't cross the T's and dot the I's at times. Doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the effort, and for the final time, I still can't get over how good Omar was. How was he so underutilized in X-Men Days of Future Past? Like, I remember watching the animated series, and when Bishop showed up, it like changed the entire show for me. I thought Bishop was so damn cool. How do you ruin that character when you had an actor this good in your arsenal? Like, Days of Future Past is already probably one of the better X-Men movies. He just would have made it so much cooler. You should have let him be the lead in all the future scenes. Everybody else is hit or miss. I don't really care about any of the other actors. I like Guadirda, and now that most of the dumb stuff is out of the way, I'm actually kind of looking forward to seeing what happens after this. So come back when season 2 drops and we'll talk about it then. In the meantime, leave a comment. Legitimately, I have nobody to talk to about this show, and I want to talk about this show. And even though I just spent the last, oh my god, 47 minutes talking about this show, I still want to talk about it more, but with you guys. So please leave comments. Let me know what you thought of it. Did you love Omar as much as I did? Did you find some of this shit stupid? Is there something that I did mention that you've got some insight on and can make me change my mind about a certain scene? I want to love this show more, so if you can change my mind about any of these scenes, please, for the love of God, feel free to do that. And again, this took me a long time to make. This show came out how long ago, and this video is just now coming out. Learning Premiere wasn't easy, but man, what a crash course this whole thing was. So this video might end up propelling me into making a lot of future videos like this. So if you like this, let me know. What did I do wrong especially? That's what I want to hear the most of. I want to hear from the people that hate my face. What could I do different? Was the music too loud? Please give me as much criticism as you possibly can going forward, because I want to really smooth out all the wrinkles of this whole thing so I can start making these way more consistently and feel really good about them. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate you letting me ramble on for 50 minutes about this show, and I hope you had fun. Now, if you like this show and you weren't completely turned off by me mentioning Lupin the IIIrd every couple of minutes, and you enjoy the whole Lupin story, there's a movie that just came out recently. It's on Amazon Prime. It is Pixar levels good animation. Like, as someone that loves Lupin for 20-something years, I can't believe how good this movie looks. So if you like Lupin, they actually even have a couple of references to the original Arsène Lupin in the movie. Highly recommend it. It's a great jumping off point.